Alright, so today's video we're going to talk about the things that we think would make starting out RVing a little bit easier, and the things that we kind of recommend. Over the last 2 years, you know, we've kind of started, like, we felt like when we first started, you know, we toured our friends' rigs and stuff like that, and we felt like, oh, there was all this stuff that we had to buy like right away. And so over kind of 2 years, we've kind of figured out things that we really like, things that, you know, would be nice to start out with, but absolutely do you not need to go out and buy everything right off the bat. And we'll kind of talk about the things as we show you that we think you should really start off with. In fact, we did a video about the 3 absolute necessities that you need before you can even leave your driveway. And you know, we'll put the video up in the card and down in the description as well. But that way, those 3 things you absolutely have to have first before you even start. The rest of the things are kind of nice to haves, things that we think would make RVing a little bit easier and a little bit safer.
Yeah, and some of the stuff too, if you think you need additional stuff, they always say to make sure that you shop your house first. So on a set aside from the stuff that we're going to talk about, if there's other things that you might want in your RV, always remember to shop your house first, because there's things hiding out in your house that you can put in your RV instead of going out and buying stuff too.
Yeah, and it really kind of what she means there is, right, you're going to need cups, or you're going to need plates, or things like that. Well, look at how many cups do you need in the house, or are those extra cups that have been tucked away that you've gotten from barbecue places or ball games or things like that. Or maybe you have 2 brooms, or right, those type of things you already own, so why go buy them again if you don't need 2 brooms at the house? Put one in the RV. So, but yeah, so Kendra's going to take the camera. We're going to go around and kind of show you some of the things that we recommend. All right, so kind of broke it down into categories, and the first section we're going to talk about is your water, your fresh water, right? And so you're absolutely going to need a freshwater hose. You know, these are the cheap Camco brands. They're potable water hoses, you know, so they're safe for drinking. These are about $15 or $20. They come in 15, 20 foot, 25 foot sections. They're not the best, but they work. And I actually have 3 of them. We are going to replace these soon with something else, just because I want a little bit easier to curl up and move around. But they work, and we've been using these for about 2 years. We started off with one, and then we had to buy a second one because it wasn't long enough. And then we actually bought a third one because we needed something for the black tank flush, and we were looking for an orange Camco and we couldn't find it. So we just bought another one of these, and it works. Like I said, so they're not expensive. It is potable water, but as you notice, like, I have another section here. This is just a regular 10 foot or 7 foot garden hose. It's kind of up to you whether you decide if it's okay to drink out of. We use it because we don't drink the water that comes out of our faucet right now. We're gonna kind of change our setup, and this hose will change to a potable water hose because we want to stop using so many bottles of water. But part of that is filters, right? So you need an absolute must water filter, and they kind of vary, right? You can get a canister filter like this, which is an inline filter from Camco, and they're blue, and I think they were somewhere around like 100 microns or something like that. They're just activated carbon granules inside, and then you can step up to this one. Maybe I think it's about another $2 or $3 more expensive, and it's a solid block of activated charcoal, and this is actually a 1 micron, I believe. But again, these
they last maybe about 3 months, depending on the water source that you're going to use, you know, how hard the water is, the chemicals that are running through it. This one's lasted us almost about 3 months, and I'm kind of holding off. I don't want to change this one yet because we're going to change our whole freshwater setup. We want to do a three-stage filter system and a water softener, but at least right now this is how it works, and this is a great way to get started. You know, for just 20 bucks or so for the water hose and about another $15 for the filter is good enough to get you started. But one of the other absolute like necessity items you need to start with is going to be a water pressure regulator. So your water pressure regulator, this one is an adjustable. This one here is going to be like a fixed inline water pressure regulator, 40 to 50 psi. I don't think we ever really saw that. I think we got about 30 with that, but I keep it just as a backup because I already had it, and these are about $3. You can get metal ones that are maybe about 6 or 7. This one here ran us, I think, about 30 to 35, and it's adjustable, which allows me to adjust is to get more pressure out of it. And I have adjusted about 40. Depending on your rig, you could go somewhere between 40 and 60 psi. Just check with your owner's manual because it'll tell you what your pipe should be rated for. But again, absolute must. And so that's your fresh water system. Now, let's see what's next. I think we're gonna talk about our sewer system. So the system we use is these Thetford, and I think the whole kit came with a 20-foot hose, and then it came with the part that actually went into the drain. It was about 50 bucks. They're good, and we've had them again 2 years. They're almost time to replace. And in fact, this is actually the 10-foot. Right back here, we have a sewer hose like holder, and this is actually a 20-foot hose. Fits in this one perfectly, but again, it's almost time to replace them, and I won't be going back with them. They've been good, but as you can see off of this system here, it doesn't hold very well. You crinkle it in and it comes right apart. So, you know, I'm likely going to go with just the cheap Camco brand, just the black and orange hose, because you can collapse them, you can mold them, and they stay put. But yeah, I would absolutely go with a 45-degree elbow. That way you're not putting too much strain coming out. And then these right here, these are going to be your Valterra. These are additional gates. That way, you know, if the other ones fail or they open or you forget them, that it's not going to come flying out. Again, these are, I think, about 10 bucks or 20 bucks. Absolutely put one of these on. Lifesaver, so you don't get a poopsie. Get yourself a 45-degree elbow here. Again, so, you know, we use clear, so I can absolutely see when everything's clear coming out. And then the sewer hose. Now, the last thing that you're going to want to use is get yourself a set of gloves. I've been using just regular non-latex gloves for, you know, a long time. Thought about switching to a pair of gloves that is just reusable, so I'm not always wasting them or when I run out. But there are absolutely ways that you can do all of this and hook it up very sanitary, that you don't need to necessarily be in gloves. I like to have them just on the safe side, but if you didn't have them, they're absolutely an option that you don't need them. All right, so the last thing that you're going to need for your black tank or your sewage is some kind of treatment. We like this unique. We've used a couple different. I think we've used some of the little drop-in packages. When we first started out, those were okay. They weren't great. Then we switched to Happy Camper, which is great. I do, highly recommend that. But we were having an issue trying to teach our 7-year-old how to not put so much toilet paper down the drain. So we switched over to the Unique brand because it just absolutely dissolves, your toilet paper. So that's what ultimately we're going to recommend is going to that. So the next section is going to be like talk about leveling and things like that. So there's a couple different things that we got from the start and we've liked, had some issues, but one of them is going to be the Anderson levelers, and they're pretty unique because you can just drive forward on one or drive backwards on one, and kind of level out the rig, and they're great, but you don't need them. You do need a way to level it, whether you're going to use some wood, something like that, or you could go with something like these are just like little stackable blocks. In fact, this is the kit that we recommend. In fact, it's our second kit. Our first set that we start off with actually fell out of the rig going down the road. One of the side doors popped open, so we did pick these ones up again. We like them because they come with this little handle here, instead of a bag that we got to keep up with and worry about the bag getting dirty. But they're just like giant Lego blocks, and you can stack them up and create yourself like a little stair step to drive up on, depending on what you need. So they are good. You can use them to put under your leveling feet or your stabilizers. You can put them under your tongue jack. So there's a lot of other options for these. Like I said, these are the ones that we prefer from Canco, but any of these will absolutely work. Again, like we like them because they just come with this little handle, this little T. Another thing you have to have is a way to chalk your vehicle, or chalk your RV. And I go with these giant, they're kind of heavy, but they're giant rubber chalks. I'll put one in the forward and the back of the tire. I don't rely just on the Andersons if I'm using them. I want to chalk the other side as well. Just because they're plastic, they could slide. These are rubber, they will grip a little bit better. And I don't recommend going with like the cheap little like $10 plastic ones you can get from like Walmart. I had those, I used them one time and I drove over them and it absolutely smashed the chalk all together and offered no resistance to the rig, right? If you try to pull forward on these aren't going anywhere. So I recommend these or some kind of other rubber chalk to go with. But that is one thing that you need to start with. Now when it comes to leveling your rig, I carry 2 different levelers with us. I carry just a little torpedo one, and this is good, but if we're going to be somewhere for a long time, I'll maybe pull out a 2-foot one. Some people carry a 4-foot one, and I've thought about putting a 4-foot one in here for times when we're going to be somewhere a lot longer. But we switched over to the LevelMate Pro, which is an app, and I'll throw it up here on the screen so you can see it, but that way I can see it from the wheel of the truck. It tells me where I need to go, which side needs to level, and how high up it needs to go. But I always carry one of these just for those times like when the battery dies, or something where you just can't get connection. So highly recommend those. Let's see. One other thing when it comes to chalks, we also have these here called the X chalk, and they're chalks, but I don't really use them. They're great to kind of put the pressure out and take some of the bounce out of the suspension, but I don't use them as actual chalks. You can use them if it's what you got, or if you have to go up high enough where one of these isn't really going to work. They'll do the job, but like I said, I prefer to stick with one of these. Right. Last thing is going to be a tire pressure and monitoring system. Right. We have these on the valve stems, and what it does is to act just like your car. It tells you if the temperature is going up or down, out of range, or if the pressure of the tire is is going up or down, you know, and it'll alert you. The one we have is actually built into our Grand Design, and it's from Lippert's, their tire link system, and it runs through the phone, and it works okay. I wouldn't say it is absolutely perfect. We are going to go to a separate system at some point, but it does work great. I mean, there's an alarm that you put into the car, and it, you know, it alerts you. But our first trip out, absolutely first trip out of town, we had a blowout on our very first trailer, and it did quite a bit of damage. It ripped some of the wiring under here. It tore up the wood stuff under here, so it, you know, did quite a bit of damage. Luckily we didn't have frame damage and things like that, but our first trip out, and we were with, you know, already having issues. But part of it's also going to be like your tires, right? Making sure you have the right load tires for your trailer, right? And you're going to want to know that based off of the weight of your vehicle and off of the manufacturer's recommendation, whether you're going to go with like a load range E or a D or a G tire. But you also want to make sure that you are constantly inspecting your tires and looking, making sure your tires aren't expired. You know, especially once they either buying a used rig, or if you haven't used it in a while, all tires expire, and there's a 4-digit code on your tires. The first 2 digits are going to be the week in which they were made. So if it says like 36, that's the 36th week of the year. The last 2 digits are the year. So if it says 3620, it's the 36th week of 2020 that they were built or manufactured, right? And so you want to make sure you know the date of your tires, so you know how old your tires are, because just because you bought the tires, they could have been sitting on the shelf for a year or 2 years, you know, so your tires aren't necessarily new. And maybe that's something you want to look at before you buy the tires, is to know that they have you know, newer tires for you. All right, so the last system we're going to talk about is your electrical system. First thing you absolutely need is a must is a surge protector or a total electrical system protector. Okay. You need it to be able to protect your rig. You can get one that's plug in here at the pedestal, or you can get a built-in system that's built into your rig. But what it does is it shuts off the power to your rig. That way, if something goes wrong with the pedestal, you know, you're not taking that, you're not cracking all your circuit boards, because every board for like your refrigerator, your hot water heater, and all of those can quickly add up. You know, $100 here, $100 there, and before you know it, you're $1,000, $2,000 into a fix just for not having, you know, a surge protector. This one's a 30 amp. Our old rig was a 30 amp. We haven't upgraded to the 50 amp surge protector yet, because we don't know, we think we're going to do a built-in system just so we don't have to constantly put it out here. But I won't get rid of the 30 amp, because on those off times that we have to plug into a 30 amp system, I have one here. The other thing we're going to recommend is getting your different dog bones, and your dog bones are going to be your adapter, right? So we have a 50 amp trailer, but we're plugged into a 30 amp system. So I have a 50 to a 30 amp adapter to let us plug in here. But I would recommend getting adapters for every combination you might need. So like a 50 to a 30, then a 30 to a 120, or you could do a 50 to a 120. But just figure out the different combinations that you're going to need for your rig, and I highly recommend getting those to start with, because you don't know when you're going to need them. You might pull into a site and the 50 amp doesn't work, but the 30 amp side does. So you're going to, you know, use the 30 amp. Or you pull into a campground and they don't offer a 50 amp system, and you got to use a 30 amp, or maybe they only offer a 50 amp, and you have to convert your rig from a 30 amp to a 50 amp plug, which you can do, but you need the different dog bones to be able to do that. All right, so the last thing that we recommend is having some kind of communication device, or multiples of it, to communicate when you need to back in the trailer, you know, and things like that. The first one, you know, we start off with some radios, you know, just little walkie-talkies, and they work great. But sometimes, you know, while you're driving and I'm backing in, I'm constantly got to, you know, hit the button to talk. You know, so I think, you know, we've started using cell phones, and which is great because I can throw it up on the screen and I can talk, I can ask questions, and I don't have to constantly be picking up the walkie-talkie to have that communication back and forth. But you don't have cell phone service everywhere, and that's where these come in handy. You know, if you have kids, maybe get an extra set in case they break them because they like to play with them. But also know as well, like these ones here, these aren't actually walkie-talkies. These are GMRS radios. So, you know, actually by federal law, you're supposed to be a registered GMRS user. It's about $35 for the license, and then it covers you and your family. You know, I kind of recommend going that way because GMRS is kind of the new standard for like the fire service or forestry service, National Park Service. So if you're going to be anywhere, then you can actually ask them, you know, what channel do you monitor, and now you have, you know, another safety device while you're out camping, right? So I would recommend getting you know, walkie-talkies, or get some GMRS and pay to get the license. You know, but it's important to be on that same level of communication and know, you know, when your partner is saying to go one direction, know actually what the terminology is that they're using.
Yes, not just tell them to stop or okay. We had to, that was the biggest part, you know, because they always say that, you know, test the marriage by backing up your camper. Well, what tests our marriage isn't so much backing up the camper, it's the way that I talk to him when it comes to giving him directions. So I tell him okay, and he's like, I don't know what okay means.
Right,
so.
Okay has multiple meanings, right? Okay means okay, stop, okay, you're good, right? It's so use, right? And left or right is very relative as well, because she could be facing a different direction, say go left. Well, her left and my left might be different, right? So, and you go relative, like the back of the camper. So I like to reference always the back of the camper. Which way does the back of the camper need to go? So if you need to go to the passenger side, use passenger or driver, right? That way I know how to operate the vehicle, the truck, to turn and get the back side of the rig where it needs to go, right? So having those forms of communication is the last thing that we recommend. It's a lot easier than trying to yell out the window and move and things like that, and try to use hand signals, because you can't necessarily say, oh, well, stop. Well, maybe I didn't hear stop and I kept going that last foot and crushed something. You know, so we absolutely have some kind of electronic form of communication. And then the last tip I would say is, when you're backing up, is if you can't see your spotter in the mirror, stop moving. So if you're not moving, then your spotter knows they can't see me, get to where they can see me in the mirrors, right? And that way you can see your partner. You're not, maybe they slipped and fell, you're not going to run over them, but they can also give you those hand signals while you're using that communication.
Or if you don't know the word that you're looking for on how far to back up or anything, you can just be like, hey, can you see me? Like, this is where we're at. So
yeah, so those are the things that we recommend getting started with. Again, you don't have to go out and buy everything at one time, because it can get costly, but start chipping away at it. And some of those things, you know, maybe ask for maybe your birthday, if that's something you want. Like I'm a tech guy, I love, so maybe I'm gonna ask for a new TPMS system, right? Kendra, not so much. She wants you know, a pedicure and a day at the spa, which is okay, right? But know that there's, you know, there's those options to get them as gifts. You don't always have to go out and buy them right away, but those are the items that we would recommend to make RVing a little bit easier and safer and funner for you, because it's all about the adventures and the experiences, not about always setting up the camper.
no, enjoy it.
you.